Key to Life.
Hello, this is Sekou Burmese, your host of The Lit Review, a podcast brought to you by the Academy of Management Journal. In this podcast, we dive into the insights of recent research published in the journal and interview authors to discuss the inspiration for research ideas and how insights from this research apply to pressing issues in organizations and markets. This episode, I speak with Nan Jia, who's a professor of strategic management at the University of Southern California. In our conversation, I talk with her about her recent award-winning paper in AMJ about how artificial intelligence can enhance employee creativity. The paper explores how AI can enhance employee creativity by automating routine aspects of work, the drudgery of work, and enabling human employees to focus on higher-level problem solving. We discuss the paper as well as how AI is changing the nature of work overall and how organizations can best respond to these changes. I hope that you will enjoy this episode of The Lit Review and my discussion with Nan Jia. My guest today on the Lit Review podcast is Nan Jia, professor of strategic management at the University of Southern California. Her research focuses on corporate political strategy, business governance relationships, and applications of artificial intelligence technologies in management. Hello, Nan, and welcome to the Lit Review podcast.
Hi, good morning, Sekou. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure to be here.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for taking the time. So I'm going to dive in. We are here to discuss your recent award-winning AMJ paper entitled When and How Artificial Intelligence Augments Employee Creativity that you published with a wonderful team of co-authors. The paper explores how AI impacts employee creativity. Congratulations on your award, very well earned. The topic is obviously very top of mind for a lot of folks, and so I'm really excited to get in the weeds with you here a bit, but also hear your thoughts about AI in general. So before we get too far along, what got you interested in this topic, thinking about AI and creativity?
So actually, I got interested in AI application and increasingly in AI application in management, in managing employees. By the way, this is pre-Gen AI age. And at that time, I found a lot of AI applications are actually in the operations side. For example, in marketing, they have the customer engagement, and the operations of various activities for which AI is being applied. But at that time, AI has only made very slow progress into managing human beings who are going inside the firm. So this is one of the first attempts. And to some extent, how I stumbled into this creativity outcome is kind of, I would say, serendipitous. Because this is a field experiment, we are taken into wherever outside that our connections can help us. In this case, our connection is the tech firm that actually provides the AI chatbot. They have their client side, and we're taking to the client side. So to some extent, there is whatever is research availability there is afforded by their business relationship determines what we can study. But on the other hand, because there are so many amazing sort of opportunities and answer questions, I don't feel too much constrained by that. It's almost like there are a lot of unanswered questions that you're really curious to learn. And so in this particular setup, AI is being used to handle all these menial and repetitive, boring, imaginative kind of tasks so that you can focus on the tasks that the humans may find to be more interesting. And those are tasks also at the time, right now, technology changes fast. Mm-hmm. At the time, AI cannot perform satisfactorily. We actually have a pretest on that. And so this setup led us to ask this question of how AI used in the front end part of the task shapes how humans would handle the latter, the remaining part of the task. So that was where this idea came from. And what's interesting is that initially, it was not just about creativity. These human beings, these employees are there to solve problems because they're answering customers' questions.
Yeah.
Some of these problems, they've been trained before. The company, they have large knowledge banks, scripts bank. They're trying to be prepared, will help their employees get prepared as possible. But there are always unexpected type of situations, questions coming from customers. And those are so essentially, if your employees, you're answering customers' questions, or engaging with customers and trying to get them to buy your stuff, sometimes you encounter questions that you've been trained on before. Other times they are unexpected. The unexpected ones, so solving these kind of new questions, actually became our focus on creativity. But there's another half of how you actually handle the questions for which you have been trained before. So that's hopefully that gives you a little bit of background of how we I would call it almost like stumbled into this AI and creativity. I am not a creativity scholar. I know there's a large literature, it's a wonderful literature on employee creativity and organizational behavior, which completely fascinates me that I did not discover until I went into this research context.
What I love about that is, a lot of you call it serendipitous. It's also thinking opportunistically and being open to studying something that maybe you haven't studied yet to that point, but is ideal, right? And as we specifically with field research, where the field is the field, you're not going to get an organization to do something that they wouldn't ordinarily do. And so you have to be fairly flexible here. So that's great. All right. Well, you've kind of teed it up kind of nicely. So I'll ask kind of central findings of the paper, and then anything unexpected that you found in doing this, which is always something that I think happens when you do work out in the field.
Yes, definitely. So walking in there, we had a sense of if you give all these boring stuff to your to AI or someone else, you yourself can actually become more efficient, so you can spend more time and energy on whatever you are doing, and this might be different for employees with the varying level of job skills or abilities to start with. That there's a literature that supports us, and that's what we're going into. And what's interesting to us is that this big I think there are two things. Number one is the big divergence of employees' abilities to actually, with this type of AI assistance, employees' abilities to actually solve these kind of untrained questions, which we call creativity. It's a big divergence between high skill employees and low skill employees. Walking into before seeing the result, it's kind of expected that low level employees and the low skilled employees, even if they are given this additional stamina or additional energy to work on the problems, they may or may not be able to figure it out because problem can be too hard. But then this magnitude of divergence that we did not expect that big. And second thing I think was also really fascinating to me was, if you notice, there are two parts in this paper. The first part is this field experiment and going there to do a quant analysis. The other part are actually interviews. And so for me, who is trained as a quantitative scholar, a strategy scholar, the interviews reveal an aspect that I completely did not expect. So previously, when I walk into there, it's like, yes, you have the more energy, you have the you as a high skilled employees, you have the extra time, you have the energy, you have the ability now to work on and figure out these unanswered questions, newer questions, therefore demonstrate your creativity. But then in the interviews, that is there's a whole bunch of things about your motivations and your psychology that matters. So in the paper, we had a pretty sort of, a much more extensive summary of this in the form of a framework. But for example, there were things about motivation. I feel like, I am finally able to put my ability to work on something that is important. And in contrast, some of the low-skilled employees were like, when you give the repetitive part of the task, they are boring, but they're also easy. So for low skill employees, it may be boring, but I found I'm able to handle some of the easy tasks. But when you take away all these easy tasks, like selection work, everything remains becomes difficult. And that was demoralizing. That's not only ability issue, but according to these employees, that's kind of demoralizing, repeatedly hit with failure. So for me, that the entire psychological sort of consequences were actually shapes how they feel and presumably how they perform are things that I had not anticipated just based on my prior training.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot to unpack there. So first, for the listeners, the context that you were doing this field experiment, these were sales employees that had to kind of generate leads. And so you have to call a lot of employees and try to get them to purchase this credit card. And what was the AI treatment here?
Yeah. So here, so the task is actually something that annoys a lot of people. You get called and try to sell you stuff. So this is a traditional marketing sales tools, and they also have a traditional marketing funnel model, which is that they call you. In a lot of cases, you hang up. Some people are just not patient and not interested. So they kind of put it into two stages. The first stage is called lead generation. Seiko, as soon as you indicate you have a little bit interest in continuing to listen to the call, or to engage in the conversation, you become a lead. That does not mean you're going to commit to buying, but just saying that I'm willing to learn a bit more, then you become the lead. Once we confirm that, we enter the second stage, which is sales persuasion. Where they're going to start to find out what you actually need and try to persuade you that their product actually meets your need. So this is a two-stage. The first stage of the sales lead generation was done by AI. And as soon as there's an indication that, I'm willing to learn a bit more about the product, then AI will hand this over to a human being, to a customer rep. So this is the task.
So the employee that is using this AI technology, they are no longer having to call over and over and over again and being hung up on over and over and over again. They're just waiting for that lead, the person that shows some interest, and then get transferred to them. And now it's about, hey, can I persuade you to take the next step?
Yes, indeed. So the lead generation is a very much kind of a boring, standardized process. And our pretest actually, I think, is showing the paper the success rate of high-skill, low-skill employees where AI is the same. So it's like there's not much you can do, even if you're high-skilled. AI can help you just screen out those who are not interested. And then once you demonstrate some interest. Now I'm going to engage in this persuasion stage, and as you can imagine, in this stage, the conversation will become pretty interesting, right? There are some underlying needs that you have are very much aligned with what I expected from other customers, but then you almost always have something kind of more idiosyncratic. And this also engaged back and forth human interaction, and this may or may not be included in the paper. I think we kind of provided in our response letter. So in our experiment, AI was used in the first stage. The question is, what happens when at that time, by the way, this is pre-Gen AI stage. What happens when that is used in the latter stage, in the sales persuasion, just for this technology per se? It's not just AI, it's that particular AI chatbot per se. It actually, in terms of getting customers to buy, it actually underperforms the high-skilled employees a lot. But it's actually not that much lower than the low-skilled employees. So that's the strength or weakness, however you see it, of this particular technology in sales persuasion.
So let's talk about that, because I think that's where all of the discussion is around how is this changing, what's going on. Tons of fears that AI technology is going to come and take away jobs. Now, what I'm hearing you say is it depends on the base level of skill, on your experience. That was the first part. That was in the paper. But what you just also mentioned is, hey, they were experimenting back then, and by now you have to imagine it's probably much farther along. How can these things actually perform? Could they potentially replace a lower or medium skilled person in this level? And so what is your take on this? Is this something that what are the implications, I should say, for how organizations think about hiring and rewarding if this were a technology that you would assume is being used more and more often?
Right. So let's take on the latter question, which is more challenging and very interesting, and on which we actually do not have real data because right now is the Gen AI stage. The limitation of that pre-Gen AI bot in performing these sales persuasion tasks that is underperforming the high skill labor, employees or customer rep, is that is very much a single domain type of AI. AI is trained on extensively on these scripts about this type of conversation about selling this type of product. It is not able to draw from cross-domain knowledge. So once you started to mention something outside this, for example, you're going to connect to your prior experience, and that AI is not able to actually process that effectively. And as we know, Gen AI is the power of it is that it's cross-domain. Right, it's just reach into so much different areas of knowledge and then draw things that they consider relevant. So we do not have that type of technology. At least, I'm pretty sure some companies are applying for that. But if I were based on my understanding of the technological feature or weakness of that old generation AI, if I were to speculate, the Gen AI based the system these days can perform much better in the sales persuasion stage.
Okay. So what does that mean, do you think, then, for companies that are looking to staff these sorts of positions that have a good amount of drudge work, but then other type of work that is increasingly being able to be done by, or is this stoking the fears that people have that AI is coming for my job?
Number one is I don't think it does. Number two, the job content will have to change. So it's not like we expect everything we do as before and then we just stay as happy as before. And there are two aspects to this. In the short term, even in this particular context, like engaging with the customers or all of that, in the prediction AI world, it does need quite a bit of this kind of a human training. For example, in that particular technology, it always trained on what's new, the new stuff, like say the new questions that emerge, and then later on, not in the experiment, because during experiment there was no training because we don't want to complicate things, but then it is pretty common practice for these tech firms, the vendors of these technologies would always try to use the new data to train the AI. So it needs training. There's always something new.
Okay.
Fast forward to today, it is now a research question of whether AI can actually pull together. We're trying to create new knowledge. You're trying to draw together a combination. You're trying to combine existing knowledge.
Yeah, knowledge
right?
recombination.
Yes, and I've seen work that demonstrates an AI can go in this direction, but there's disagreement in the current research that I've seen in the field to show how far it can go. Some say it can pretty novel, some say it's not as novel. And even when that happens, if I think about, so at the beginning of the podcast, you were saying that this is creativity, this is a award-winning paper. In a way, for the question about AI and creativity, this study is at a very primitive stage because AI is not there to perform this creative work, right? And a lot of the current form of AI have abilities to do that, and current research are exploring that differences.
Okay.
So that's So I want to say that's one. Is in the past it needs human. Right now, does it need human to be perfect? We're still waiting to see the results. The second aspect of this, because there's a human interaction. When I talk with you, it's not only what I said, it's also how I say things. So and how you feel about whoever is communicating with you about it. So a big hurdle for AI in a lot of contexts. If you're interested, I can tell you a few where that does not suffer from this issue. There is this algorithm aversion that you may like what I said, but as soon as you, for example, as soon as you know I'm AI, I'm a digital
Yeah.
person, you feel differently. And
Yep.
there's also another aspect of AI, which is that the technology-wise, that it's not just the content production, but also if it's verbal, you also will have all these voices, like so
Mhm.
manipulating voices to imitate emotions. In fact, the image is even more complicated, right?
Yeah.
So whether it actually can AI can capture these nonverbal cues that
Yeah.
it is developing, but for now, humans are that's where
Yeah.
we're human, like we have a lot of us, not everyone, a lot of
All
us
right.
is the inherent.
So I can keep my job for a little while longer, is what I
You
hear you
absolutely
saying. All right, that's good. They keep saying, "Hey, professors, you guys are gonna be the first ones gone." I'm like, all right.
no.
So, in keeping with that idea about skill and the issue with AI, one of the things that, and I loved reading your article because I think it reinforced something with me, particularly in dealing with students, which is, why should I learn X if generative AI can do it for me? And part of what I'm hearing in this is the returns to this technology are going to be much higher for those that have skills, right?
Yes.
So developing those skills, knowing how to problem solve, knowing how to sell, knowing how to communicate is
Yeah.
going to allow you to gain a lot more from the use of AI technology than it does it for me. It's not replacement, it's sort of an amplifier.
Yes. So so let me start with when I look, there are a lot of papers, not in our only in our field, but in IS and other areas where they were trying to distinguish high skilled, low skilled employees, however defined, and just to understand how they benefit, which ones benefit more from the AI assistance. The results are actually all over the place.
Hmm.
But a lot of that depends on what type of AI you're talking about, what type of tasks you're talking about, what type of assistance are you talking about, what type of skills, right? All of
Yeah.
things are right now it's pretty messy. But
Yeah.
my sense is that for the knowledge intensive work, for example, the type of job that we do, high domain skills, folks with greater domain skills are bound to benefit more from AI. But then that, on the one hand, elevates the importance of this kind of domain skill human capital. You should tell your students to do that. On the other hand, it actually creates an extra challenge for those who are on their ways to acquire higher
Hmm.
domain skills.
Hmm.
So they one example, Seiko, you are a full professor, you are very expert in the field, but there was a young Seiko in the past who knew much less, who are less
Hmm.
experienced, who are less knowledgeable, but he still continued to invest in human capital, plow you through, pushing forward to get to where we are.
Hmm.
But that young Sekou today will face extra challenges. Number
Hmm.
one is that he will see whatever his several weeks or days, weeks of work that can generate the same level in a few seconds, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and not so there are other things about in our field, I mean, just train researchers, for example, we demand a lot more immediate outcomes for our students.
Yeah.
So in my mind, it is great that to know that higher skilled employees or so humans in knowledge intensive work will benefit more from AI assistance. The bigger
Hmm.
question is how do we keep those like less experienced humans continue to invest such that they are there. That process is like
Hmm.
the learning curve becomes steeper. It feels
Yeah.
like you don't see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel. That is probably a bigger issue in my mind.
Yeah. And I guess this is how do you continue to convince someone to invest in a very difficult way, saying like, hey, there will be long-term benefits to this that you aren't going to see for a while. And a lot of it has to do, I think, with thinking about incentives within organizations. So this is the next question, second to last one I'll ask is, how do firms deal with this, right? If you have a situation where you can implement a technology that will help make work better for some of your workforce, but also maybe make things more anxious for others. But productivity, it sounds like this is a benefit for productivity overall. How do you think organizations should at least consider reworking the nature of the work, incentives, promotion, all those sorts of things.
That's a research that takes
That's
multiple.
your next paper. I'm just trying to line up your next
Exactly.
research stream here now.
Yeah, it will take several dissertations to actually address this question. So can I maybe start with, I have multiple thoughts that come to mind, but can I start with a thought that's closer to this paper, maybe kind of more tangible for us to think about? So this paper will focus on the high-skilled employees, but low-skilled employees, they also benefited from AI. You will see some of these results that is not highlighted, but they benefit from AI assistance in a very different way from the high-skilled employees. The high-skilled employees, with AI assistance, now they are able to solve more of these untrained questions, and which is creativity. That was not obvious, like that did not happen to low-skilled employees. But with AI assistance, these low-skilled employees, they actually raise their accuracy, answer questions for which they have been trained on before. It's almost like a low-skilled student, you always get things wrong in exams that they were taught multiple, you have students like that.
Mm-hmm.
And now, for those type of questions, the accuracy rate is higher. So they are also improving, but not in the creativity domain. They are very much improving in the efficiency domain. So to firms, this is also value. This is also you're using, if you introduce AI here, I mean, you need both type of, not all your employees will be high skill, they are too expensive.
Yep.
It's hard to keep them. You also want your low skill employees not to make that many mistakes.
Yep.
Right. So in a way, it's helpful in both regards. You just need to have different expectations. You have to recognize that, for example, when you're facing low skill employees, the progress came from getting more of these things that they are supposed to know, not correct. Right. And don't count on them to explore, push the frontier of things.
Got it. Okay. So what it sounds like is a readjustment in the way performance is measured that is cognizant of skill level, right? And so, all right, if depending on where you have been historically, we now implement this new technology, where do I expect to see the largest delta in your performance? On the creativity side, on the efficiency side, technical side, et cetera.
Yeah.
That's I like that answer. That keeps everyone's got their job and everyone is performing well. Look at you. All right. All right. Okay. You've been great. I'm going to take us out on two fun questions. So the first is thinking about other research. And I know I've already given you a few dissertations worth of questions to consider, but our field is driven by this questioning of phenomena, things that we don't understand and trying to understand them. Are there any sorts of trends or behaviors or phenomena right now that are piquing your curiosity?
Yes, absolutely. Let me start with things that are related to AI, because that's where my focus is. So this is not a plug and play system, and when it's introduced, it actually to make it the best use of it, sometimes requires rewiring a lot of things in organizations. And right these days, I've been looking. I'm highly fascinated by the question of not just, oh, this is the original way you do things. If I put AI here or there, how do they change human? Which is actually the approach of the paper I was talking about. So these days, I have been fascinated by how organizations could effectively leverage AI. Some data that perplex a lot of people is that it looks like the vibrant adoption of AI has not generated any performance increase yet, and some people were using this as evidence of, oh, this is a hype, or what's went wrong? Did we look at different wrong places and things like that? And in my mind, this is a stage where organizations, they're still trying to figure out how to use these technologies. And this is not a plug and play system, such that in this paper, for example, a lot of other papers, the approach is, this is the existing way of doing business. And let's see if I put AI here versus there, how does it change things? But if you take a step back, it could be the cases that the entire way of organizing needs to change. Just like when those kind of new technologies for automation comes into place, that whole range of research show that the entire workplace the factory floor needs to be reoriented. People, they do things differently. It's no longer where the workshop, now we have a machine and sitting next beside me. So that is something that is hugely fascinating. And we're in a podcast. I was actually listening to another podcast of a pre-Gen AI entrepreneur firm talking about how they think AI should change their organization. And the founders made an interesting point, which is that you want to take a step back of not just to say how you're working right now, but if I don't have anything and want to achieve that outcome, I want to produce that product. And given this Gen AI tools at this moment, what are the things and how do I organize this? Absence, where we have achieved so far. And that you can imagine probably will put a lot of larger incumbent firms at a disadvantage, because the bigger the existing systems are, the more difficult it would for you
to reorganize their work. So this could be a benefit of, or you might see some small or medium-sized firms that are able to harness this, reorganize quickly, and thus set themselves up for major success in the future.
That's one speculation. And I said speculation. I agree with that. It's just that we need more evidence on that.
Of course. Yeah, these are just curiosity, piquing your curiosity. I know you're like, I don't have evidence to show. This is just what are you interested in? All right. Any other ones? It sounded like you had a list. Do you have a second one, or is that the main one?
So that's more at more micro level.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned at the beginning, my research also includes corporate political strategy and those kind of business government relationships.
Yeah. Let's get to the good stuff. Well, what are you thinking about that?
I see that the AI aspect. Okay. Previously, when I dived into the AI world, there was always this question: how is it related to non-market strategy or corporate political strategy? At that time, I was like, I'm not sure. It's just they are both fascinates me, and there must be a connection somewhere. And right now, I think the connection is a bit clear. It's like, if you look at where governments where they pay attention to, this is high tech. So if you look at even geopolitical tension, high tech is foreign policy. And so for firms right at this moment, the government is very much, in a lot of contexts, they walk from the background to the forefront. They change things, and they want to develop this technology, or they want to prop firms to develop this technology. So these two type of topics are more related than ever before because of the changing attitude and the changing views. And if you think about the biggest challenge that we have in our generation, I think we are kind of witnessing history, not always a good thing, but we're witnessing history. Two of the bigger things. Number one is this AI technology is going to change a lot of things in society. Number two is that the previous world order that we've seen, we grew up with in the past 40 plus years, is falling apart. So where is it going down the road? That is both exciting and pretty scary. But then for scholars, like, there's so much things to look at.
I tell people when they ask, like, how are you doing? And I was like, well, the social scientist in me is fascinated with all these things happening. The regular person in me is sometimes anxious, but from a social science, someone that's interested in phenomena and explanation, we live in a very, very abundant time. All right, last question. What are you reading for fun?
Well, like, when I define fun in that way, you're going to call me a nerd.
However you define fun, but it cannot be an academic journal or something like that.
Oh, no, that's fine. Okay. These days, a lot of my passion in both teaching and increasingly research centers on product management, which is increasingly kind of a newer discipline or type of jobs that has a history somewhere else in marketing, but now is no longer marketing, it's a leadership type of a job. And on the West Coast, that's also a lot of the master MBA students on the West Coast, the tech firms, and that's where they're most desirable jobs. And so a lot of the things I read are in that domain, related to, for example, in the product management, they have their godfathers, Marty Kagan, for example. He has books on Inspired and those love that about essentially it's a problem solving in the context of products. So there are also like in because that is a pretty long process in product management. And what's interesting is that different stages of that, there are also books related to that, which in some way I found is very much related to academic work as well. Let me give you one example. So at the customer, very much you start as a product manager, the first thing you're going to have to achieve is called product market fit. Is whatever you produce, there's a market for it. In order to achieve that, you have to understand your audience, like your customers, right? And then engaging in customer discovery, which is traditional marketing domain, but I also find it interesting. There's a lot of fascinating aspect to it. For example, there's a famous book called The Mom Test, which is essentially is like you want to seek feedback on your ideas, and your mom would be, honey, this is great, fantastic, and she has every good intention to actually support you and make it happen. But that information has a lot of noise. It's not useful. And so therefore, in a lot of these customer discovery, what you would do is not exactly to be aware of these, not conflict of interest, this background, but a lot of that is you're going to have to more deeply understand your customers' need, oftentimes by not just using language, but observe what they do in order to really understand them. So to some extent, it seems domain specific, but to me, what's fascinating for me is that if you think about our papers, right? So our paper is a product. It needs to meet a need. And when I was a doctoral student, I was always asked a question, who is your audience? Like that's the toughest question for me. What do you mean by audience? Why do I care? There's an audience. Write a paper and that's it, right? A good paper, rigorous paper. But then it's really about who do you write the paper for? What type of problem does it solve? Is it a real problem? Is it a problem worth solving? And not everybody holds that problem. So that's like, related to in our academic work, we say that, sometimes you'll hit the wrong audience, right? Hit the people who are not your target audience, who have the problem to solve. So what's interesting is like in this entire product management process, I see various things that appear in teaching connecting to our job, which is like we're here to produce research.
Okay. So wait, what is the book? You missed me on what is the book that you're reading? Or is it a number of books in product marketing?
Yeah, no, it's in product management. So Marty Kagan, for example, Marty Kagan, Cagan, he has some books like say I think the more recent one is Inspired. That's the middle one. That's the one I am looking at this moment. And also Lean product, sort of Lean development. I can find those specific titles for you. But this is pretty esoteric.
No, this is good. I've had people tell me they read nature books or they read, other things. You like product management. So that's what you're reading on your vacation. You go on vacation, you're sitting at the beach, you're cracking open a product management book.
I listen to a podcast of their podcast as well.
Audio book.
Yeah, and the part of that is problem solving. That is, you'll find that, yeah.
Well, if you are looking to figure out who your audience is for your paper, you need to reach out to Nan, so she'll be able to tell you how to discover your customer discovery. So thank you so much for joining me on the Lit Review. It's so great to chat with you and about this amazing and interesting paper, and I look forward to hearing and reading your future work on this topic as well. All right, that's it for the Lit Review. I appreciate Nan for her time, and I appreciate you all for listening. If you like this episode, please subscribe to the Lit Review. You can find this podcast by searching The Lit Review and AMJ Podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast platforms, as well as on the AMJ homepage. Thanks to the Academy of Management for their support for this podcast. Thanks to my producer, Holly Fearing, for all of her work behind the scenes. Our theme music is produced by Key to Life. This is Sekou Burmese. See you next time. Take care and be good.